Alright, let's look at the skill tree. I will refund all my points so you get to see what the skill tree looks like whenever you start the game. The basic skill branch has initially 4 skills. Depending on your playstyle, you should choose your skills wisely. But before that, if you put 1 skill point into a skill, you will unlock its enchanted version. If you put a skill point into that enchanted version of that skill, you will unlock 2 upgrades and you can only choose one of them. So why is it important which basic skill you choose? Let's take a look at the enchanted version of Arclash. If you critically strike, then it will swipe an additional time. If you compare it with Firebolt, the enchanted version, it will pierce through burning enemies. And the enchanted version of Frostbolt, it has a 10% chance to explode on chilled targets. That percentage will increase to 100% against frozen enemies. So as you can see, these enchantments and upgrades are coming with conditions. And these conditions are not easy to fulfill, especially early on. So it's not like you are getting a buff or you're debuffing the enemies. It's a straight additional damage boost to your character. It is most of the time tied to conditions. And it is not unique to the basic skill branch of the sorcerer. If you look at the other branches, you will find it again and again and again. I will quickly hover over every skill, its enchanted version and the upgrades. If you're curious, you can pause the video at any time and read through it. So where it gets interesting are the debuffs and buffs you can afflict upon your enemies, or the buffs you can give yourself. If you take a closer look, you are able to reduce your enemy's movement, also known in game as you are chilling the enemy. You can inflict vulnerability on your enemy, so he takes 20% more damage. You can freeze them, stun them, you can create a crackling energy. It looks like an orb, you have to pick it up, and whenever you pick it up, nearby enemies take damage. If you burn an enemy, he will take damage over time. There's a passive, Snap Freeze. Whenever you lucky hit your enemies, it causes frost skills to instantly freeze your enemies. Burning enemies deal reduced damage to you, and you can also immobilize them as well. If you look at the buffs, then the sorcerer has a wide range you can play with. You have immunity, unstoppable, barrier, damage reduction, not only through passives, you have active skills like ice armor, fire abilities. Killing burning enemies will cause your damage to increase. You can extend burns. Critical strike damage will increase per nearby burning enemy. And if you decide to put points into Flame Shield, its enchanted and upgraded version, then it will grant you on activation move speed and healing. Your lightning skills, your shock skills will increase your critical strike chance, and it resets after a critical strike. It increases your damage over time for 2 seconds. Less damage taken for 5 seconds. This only applies if you spec into it. Lucky hit on shock skills. Cause to stun for 3 seconds. You have unstoppable mana regen. You can heal yourself for X amount for each nearby burning enemy. As you can see, there are many tools given to you to create a synergy with all the passives and skills, and to find that synergy, the way I did it was to experiment. Let's move to the Codex of Power. The aspects you can get in the game can really change the way you're playing your class. In my case, I found an aspect that allowed me to summon an additional Hydra. On top of that, I found another one that allowed me to auto-cast a barrier upon myself whenever I fought an elite, and it had a cooldown onto it. So generally speaking, it's not only that you get a straight damage boost to your character. You can get utility, you can strengthen your defense, you can strengthen your offense. So it really depends on how you play your character, and you can bolster that playstyle even further. So what are the pros playing this class? As for me, for build variety, I went for a single element build. I played the Fire Sorceress and summoned Hydras and picked everything in my skill tree that enhanced fire damage, and I did fairly well in the beta. But that's not the only way you can play the Sorceress. You can play multiple elements, you can mix them up, look for synergies, it works very well. And keep in mind that you are playing as a caster, and the benefits of that is that you are staying away from poison puddles, mechanics, knock-ups, knockbacks, knockdowns, barrel explosions. Barrier to entry for this class is low in my opinion, and that is because you get the hang of the class very quickly. But if you try to min-max your playstyle and you want to enhance it even further, then you actually have to get into the finer details, and you need to check for the synergies that will further enhance your playstyle. Also, mistakes are more forgiving. Let's say if you are encircled by mobs, you can freeze them with your Frost Nova and get away. And another point is that you have your immunity that allows you to break out of life-threatening situations. CCs like stuns, roots, you can't be damaged, and all negative effects are removed and prevented. Another strong point is that you have AoE skills in your disposal like Blizzard and Frozen Orb, and you can easily focus down huge enemy packs. The cons. Mana resource management can be difficult, especially in early levels. After spending 2 or 3 skills, you will run out of mana. There are advanced skills that will require you to aim and predict enemy movement. That can be hard in order to hit them. For example, Meteor or Firewall. If you might ask, why is Firewall on this list? Well, you are laying a fire on the ground, but in order to deal the maximum damage, the enemies need to stand in Firewall for 8 seconds. Skills with conditions. Enchanted Meteor requires you to hit at least 3 enemies, and then you have a 30% chance to cast an additional Meteor. There are skills that lock you into position, and that is Incinerate. As a mage, you want to move, stay away from your enemies and not stay close, or don't give them the opportunity to aim at you and cast abilities upon you. And the last point is standing still to proc effects. The passive Soulfire requires you to stand still in order to reduce fire skill costs. If you take a closer look at my gear, then you can see that I try to focus on a Hydra build with good sustained damage and legendary aspects that comforts my playstyle, and I also put an emphasis on defensive skills like Frost Nova, Fire Armor and Ice Armor. The reason for that is in life-threatening situations I can get out of stuns and roots pretty easily. There are notable points, and I didn't put these points on the pro list or on the con lists. That is because I think they are somewhere in between. For example, frost skills. With the right build, you deal additional damage to elite enemies, but that is if you play an ice build. Elemental Attunement, a passive that allows you on lucky hit, if you critically strike, to reset one of your defensive abilities. On rank 1 you have a 5% chance for that. Summons like Hydra and Iceblade that aid you in battle require no micromanagement. They are good in boss battles, but against a large group they attack random enemies. Not really useful if you want to focus down an elite in a group. Ultimate abilities are strong and can save you or turn the tables around, but have high cooldowns and take a regular skill slot. It is important to keep in mind that in the beta the max level was 25, and in the late game with certain items like Ancestral, the playstyle of a class can change very much. Also, only the first act was accessible, the Fractured Peaks. With limited time, item, resources, there wasn't enough to check out what the Sorceress was really capable of. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I used the time to get a feeling what all the skills do in actual combat. My focus wasn't to find out the best build and to min-max it in order to deal the best damage. Hopefully you enjoyed the content and learned more about the Sorceress. Like, comment and subscribe to help me with the algorithm and for more videos. I see you next time.